Life sometimes has its irreversible point. It doesn't announce its arrival with any fanfare. Nothing attracts attention. It comes as an oppressive silence, splitting our perception into two distinct sides. On the one, the naive coziness of illusory certainties. On the other, naked and harsh reality. Many never reach this existential crossroads, preferring the protection of fabricated truths to the risk of disturbing clarity. Albert Camus called this confrontation with the absurd. It's about realizing without filters that the deepest questions will remain unanswered. For him, the real tragedy was never pain or physical suffering, but lucidity, relentless in revealing our condition as extras in a plot with no pre-written script. This realization does not bring liberation or relief. On the contrary, it traps us in a cruel paradox, making us aware that the world turns without a clear destination, without a higher mission or purpose to justify our anguish. Those who cross this border are not those who believe themselves to be wise, but those who have lost the support of their certainties, coming face to face with the real and indifferent emptiness of existence. Emptiness, in this case, is literal. There is no symbolism here, just the direct and silent realization of the lack of purpose in the incessant movement of life. And when this truth emerges, the inevitable question arises, why go on? Awakening doesn't bring enlightenment. It only removes the blindfold that hid the absence of any higher entity or moral guide. Without metaphysical references, everyday distractions become hollow. Parties, social achievements, imposed goals prove incapable of filling the void of meaning. The awakened individual becomes a stranger among his peers, still physically present but distant and separated by an invisible barrier. For Camus, this clarity is irreversible, a weight that can never be lifted. There is no return to sweet ignorance. The awakened remain solitary observers of the futility of the human spectacle, unable to believe again in the illusory comforts offered to those who are still asleep. This harsh and definitive lucidity becomes his perpetual prison, silent and without remedy. Although Camus clearly recognizes the emptiness that permeates human existence, his perspective does not fall into complete pessimism. He never denies that there is genuine beauty in life, a brief beauty found in the simple fact of living it, albeit fleeting and devoid of any higher promise. The greatest paradox lies precisely there. Only when one fully accepts this purposeless reality is it possible to experience genuine freedom. It's not about something transcendental, but about the concrete autonomy to establish one's own principles, even knowing that these values will be fleeting and personal. They are internal guides, consciously produced by someone who recognizes the existence of nothingness without trying to deny it. This ability to resist emptiness defines the conscious individual. He walks without expecting applause, recognition, or any kind of prize, aware that his decisions will seem incomprehensible to those who still sleep peacefully in the comfort of illusions. However, he moves forward not because he believes in a glorious end goal, but because he understands that moving forward is the only possible response to the absolute absence of meaning. It's not a struggle to defeat the absurd, but an intimate movement of affirmation, an honest gesture that affirms personal dignity in the face of existential emptiness. In this action lies his silent rebellion, capable not of transforming the whole world, but at least of redefining how he lives in it. The discomfort of this situation lies not only in the contrast between perceptions, but especially in the profound isolation that the lucid person inevitably feels. Even in the midst of a crowd, he remains alone, since no one can truly share the weight of his open conscience. There is no collective comfort for those who have clearly seen the fictitious structures that sustain everyday reality. And from this absolute solitude springs a unique way of existing, in which the absurd is not ignored but bravely faced, without false hopes or unrealistic expectations. It is from this essential solitude that a silent resistance to empty conventions arises. It's not something grandiose or visible in the eyes of others. It's an internal rebellion, discreet and intense, where everyday acts, dialogues, promises, encounters lose their genuine appearance and become artificial. The world remains the same. It is the conscious being that has irreversibly detached itself from illusory traditions. When clarity arises without support, it can become a crushing burden. Many who see the absence of meaning are easily seduced by absolute discouragement, not because they desire chaos, but because perceiving emptiness has the potential to silently erode the vital energy that once drove them. Camus clearly understood this threat. Faced with emptiness, there is a treacherous whisper suggesting that giving up would be an honorable decision. However, this subtle argument hides a lie that is even more dangerous than collective illusions. Neither cynicism nor indifference are the real fruits of lucidity. On the contrary, they are disguises for giving up. Masks that appear intelligent, allowing inaction to disguise itself as wisdom. But Camus vigorously rejects this trap. Genuine awakening for him does not lead to existential contempt, but generates a renewed commitment to life itself. Not because he believes in a transcendent purpose, but simply because he consciously chooses to go on, knowing from the outset that such attitudes will not alter the indifferent course of the universe. This revolt is discreet but never bitter. It is a serene denial of the temptation to surrender to discouragement. It is not an exercise in optimism, nor is it a denial of the inevitable pain of waking up in a world still trapped in illusions. Rather, it is a profoundly courageous act, accepting that there are no guarantees and yet continuing with integrity on this uncertain journey. This obstinate refusal does not attempt to change the structure of absurd existence, but to recreate the way in which we travel this path. The strength of the one who has awakened does not lie in blind faith or the expectation of a saving future, but in the obstinate decision to resist the temptation to give up disguised as lucidity. This is how an ethic of the present emerges, without seeking recognition or prizes, valuing the simple, honest, and upright act of living fully in the face of the inexplicable. This integrity, however, is not naive or festive. It is an integrity marked by bitterness, built on a frank acceptance of human loneliness, finitude, and fragility. It doesn't seek heroic gestures or monumental feats, but reveals itself in discreet movements, small affirmations of daily resistance. This style of existence does not demand public recognition. The struggle of the lucid is silent, internal, invulnerable to the applause of others. Absurdity then ceases to be an empty punishment and becomes the firm foundation on which they build an authentic life. The conscious individual doesn't see himself as a martyr who brings a definitive revelation, nor as a savior who will liberate a distracted humanity. He clearly realizes that the universe lacks any evident purpose, but he still decides to generate beauty, distribute affection, establish human connections, even knowing that all these achievements will be ephemeral. Its value is not in holding absolute certainties, but in categorically refusing to submit to the evidence of meaninglessness. Its greatness is not displayed on flags or recorded on monuments. It is discreet, manifesting itself only in the intimate and dignified posture in the face of an existence that, in the eyes of the majority, is nothing more than a stage spectacle without a defined script. Within this way of living, there is no arrogance or judgment towards those still trapped in the comforting illusion of existential sleep. Not out of altruism or respect, but out of a deep understanding that for many, remaining asleep may be the only bearable way of facing reality. You can establish your own morals, chart your own path, guided only by the sincerity of your gaze and the consistency of your actions. This freedom has a unique essence, completely different from the freedom offered by social conventions. It doesn't derive from external regulations, but from an internal existential force that no one can take away or assign. By assuming this position, the awakened person abandons the expectation of external validation or the revelation of some definitive goal for existence. They become the conscious creators of their own path, recognizing its fragility, ephemerality, and constant exposure to chance. In this uncertain terrain, the creative act takes on vital importance. Creating is not a form of evasion, but an authentic affirmation in the face of the total absence of meaning. Producing human bonds, works, or experiences is not an artifice against inevitable death, but a sincere tribute to the present, a lucid and honest way of inhabiting life without false promises. Each creation, however small it may seem, is a gesture of genuine freedom in the face of the absurd. Although incapable of altering the indifferent universe, this act defines the unique presence of the lucid within it. It doesn't eliminate the inevitable pain, but it puts it into perspective. Thus, instead of fighting uselessly against the void, one learns to live with it, transforming the absurd into an inevitable partner in a conscious, full, and real dance. Life, when lived consciously, does not need to be supported by false hopes or contaminated by exhausted pessimism. The true richness of existence lies in perceiving it fully, accepting its imperfect, temporary, and fleeting beauty. In everyday gestures, in simple moments, the awakened find reasons to keep creating. He doesn't want to change the scenery or control destiny, but has humbly learned to appreciate every moment of the game of existence. This attitude doesn't require heroic or dramatic acts, but it does demand constant attention. A firm presence that rejects indifference and preserves the essential value of life. Camus understood that this way of existing, in essence, is profoundly revolutionary. Not because it seeks to overthrow established social orders, but because it challenges the primitive human impulse to seek absolute meanings or definitive certainties. Whoever frees themselves from these canes no longer needs them to walk. This autonomy arises in the fertile solitude of an awakened conscience. And it is there, amidst the silence of this inner desert, that the lucid person finds a silent complicity with others who have chosen, like him, to live honestly. It's not an explicit brotherhood nor an official community. It is a discreet connection revealed in the humble, courageous, and true way in which they live their humanity, welcoming pain without refusing joy. This connection is expressed in a particular, realistic tenderness, free from easy sentimentality. It is a mature tenderness that recognizes our essential fragility and the transience that unites us all. From this perspective, the lucid person sees the world not as an adversary or a salvation, but as a companion on a journey whose destination is unknown. This allows them to live among others without despising those who still need illusions to survive. This understanding doesn't turn the lucid person into a missionary trying to wake others up. On the contrary, it makes him a serene witness to a truth that cannot be transmitted, only experienced in everyday life. His attitude is the purest rebellion described by Camus. It's not a rebellion that generates noise or tries to convert anyone. It is a silent and continuous resistance, perceptible only in the daily insistence on maintaining one's dignity in a world that prefers to sleep. Accepting this condition is not giving up, but the supreme exercise of human freedom, consciously choosing how to live, love, and create, despite the certainty that everything will disappear one day. In this recognition, the lucid person finds peace, not based on ignorance, but on full acceptance of reality in its brutal beauty. It is in this open and honest presence that lucidity ceases to be a burden and becomes a flame, brief like everything human, but capable of warming souls on the darkest nights. The true value of this choice lies in not demanding a definitive explanation or illusory comfort from life. It's accepting each moment without conditioning it to reassuring standards or narratives that are too sweet to be real. It is a complete and conscious surrender, perhaps the most difficult and liberating of human decisions. In this radical openness, lucidity ceases to be an unbearable burden and becomes a profound and authentic way of being present in the world, facing reality without fear, however harsh it may be. Those who wake up amidst the majority who remain dreaming soon realize that the highest mission is not to bear this awareness like a burden, but to maintain it like a gentle and insistent fire. Not to change the cold course of the universe or soften its eternal silence, but because this intimate fire can at least illuminate and warm our existence a little, especially during the deepest nights. It doesn't intend to guide anyone or point out the right paths. It simply reaffirms with dignity that it is possible to live fully even in the heart of the absurd. This conscious choice constitutes a rebellion much deeper than any cry or protest. It doesn't seek to convince crowds or arouse applause. It simply upholds its inner truth, aware of its brevity and transience. This is the fundamental paradox of being awake in a sleepy world and yet deeply recognizing that being alive is totally worth the effort. If something inside you has awakened after following these reflections, I kindly ask you to leave a comment, like this video, or subscribe to the channel. It may seem like a small gesture, but it's essential if content like this is to continue to touch more people and provoke genuine reflection. In a moment, you'll see two video suggestions on the screen. I won't tell you specifically what they're about, but I can assure you that they cover topics that are just as impactful and relevant to what we've discussed here. If you feel there's still a lot to explore, don't hesitate to continue. Thank you for being here. May your journey, however difficult, continue to be authentic, courageous, and open to the beauty and truth that can emerge even in the midst of the absurd. See you soon on a new journey.